Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, a disciplined listening podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Josh Rizzo. Josh has spent over 30 years studying leadership under pressure on the battlefield, in the boardroom, and on job sites nationwide. Among his many, many accolades, he is a West Point graduate and a Bronze Star recipient. He works with leaders at the intersection of elite performance and well-being. And today, I'm really excited to share this conversation with him as we draw on all of his background, all of his experience, and all of his work in order to talk about some very important ideas that we can all employ as leaders in our households, in our businesses, and beyond. I want to talk about the importance of getting ourselves right first and the importance of mastering our internal communications. He is going to walk us through a very appropriate and well-illustrated airplane analogy that we can all apply to our leadership lives. He's going to talk about addressing the spectrum of needs and what it means to create islands of progress, among many, many other great ideas. I really appreciate you joining us for another great conversation this week. Thank you very much. Before you head off the internet today, please take a couple of quick minutes just to check out our sponsors. You've heard me say it. Please head over to humantel.com. That's where you can enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off their best-in-class online training to recognize when people's emotions are shifting by accurately interpreting their nonverbal communication and facial expressions. I highly recommend it. For all the professional interviewers listening, please head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you can get all your questions answered about the International Association of Interviewers, the national organization, as well as its local chapters, and the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. And finally, you can also check out inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs we are asked to custom facilitate for our clients in order to teach their senior leaders, negotiators, sales teams, HR teams, and more how to unlock hidden value in all of their high impact conversations. We really appreciate you being here for another week. Thank you so very much. So now without further ado, I introduce to you, Josh Rizzo. Josh, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, man, it's a privilege to be here. I'm excited.
Well, thank you very much. The privilege is all mine, man. It's all mine. Nobody understands why we're laughing, but that was a beautiful time inside joke. We got some mutual acquaintances, friends. I'm so glad they put us together and we have the chance to have this conversation today. And I'm glad you're making fun of me right out of the gate. So very clearly this hour is going to fly by. We're starting it off on a light tone, which I really appreciate, but a lot of what you teach and what you work with organizations on has a little bit of a heavier theme, heavier background, and that's balancing leadership and mental health for ourselves as leaders, but also for our teams as well. And we'll get into your background to the extent that you want to share it as we go through. But I think the question that I'd really like to open this conversation up with is, what does it mean to lead effectively while balancing mental health awareness and focus?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And, one that took me probably 30 years to answer you right now, and a lot of personal trials, tribulations, and growth throughout that, alongside leadership experience. So I have lived experience from a child, with mental health, and I've lived experience from the time I was 17 at West Point until now with leadership. And I think what I've found, leading with mental health in mind and kind of what that looks like, sounds like, feels like, is I think it has to start with us, with the leader, number one. And something I speak a lot about is this kind of idea of an airplane. Right. And I kind of break it into three sections: the pilot, the first class cabin, and then the main cabin. And I go in that order. And so the thing about leading with mental health in mind, I think is really, it's up to us to take care of ourselves first and make sure that we're solid, or at least on the road to being solid, whether that's, counseling or a therapist, or, it's looking inward at yourself first and seeing the kind of bag of latent emotions that we carry around, right? If something's not right in our heart and we're not okay, that's going to come out, It's going to come out in our leadership. It's going to come out in our family. It's going to come out in our conversations with whomever we're, spending time with. So I think that's number one, Michael, just getting ourselves right and making sure we take that look inward and start that journey for ourselves. Doing that, then I think you look out at your closest relationships, right? What I kind of refer to as the first class cabin. Because, I say this all the time when I work with leaders and teams, your people aren't showing up at work trying to do a poor job. They're just not. It's not normal. And if they are, you're probably going to coach them up and coach them out, right? But the majority of people, when they struggle at work, whether it's leaders, operators, individual contributors, whatever, the typical issues are coming either from their families or their people close to them, their familial, their close relationships, or from their own stuff. So I kind of ask, let's take a look at that number two. How's my family? How are my relationships, my closest relationships, the most important ones, the ones that solidify me, the ones I lean on, how are those? And kind of taking inventory and looking at that kind of stuff. And then I think we can really get out to to leadership. And once we're straight, once we've taken a look inside, and once we're working on our own self, then and only then, I think, can we really have the true compassion and empathy for the people we're leading. And a few things that I really kind of harp on with leading with this, when I work with the Air Force, that we call it heart-centered leadership, and it's really about, for me, it's about having compassion for how your message is landing, for how, what you're doing is landing, and for how it's being received by the people. And I think keeping their hearts in mind, and their kind of personal, the personal needs, right? I think we have a spectrum of needs. And I think those go from, practical, which is, hey, the people, they, to accomplish a mission or get the job done, they need budget, they need time, they need resources, they need people, they need tools, right? And that's practical. And we do a pretty good job of that, mostly in industry. But on the other side, you have the personal needs. People need to be heard, understood, cared for, included, right? And so I think when we can consider that full spectrum of needs, especially when things get hard, when things get fast, I think that's really what it means to me.
That was a great answer. Thank you. There's so many things to go back and talk about there. And I love how you talked about that spectrum of needs from practical to personal. And I'm sure you see this a lot too. Leadership, and I can't paint with too broad a brush. That would be unfair, of course, but it's really easy for leadership to focus on the practical because those things are easy to measure, when often it's the personal that makes the practical effective. You can give people all the tools, and you can give them the time, and you can give them the resource, and you can give them clear expectations. But if some of those personal needs aren't met, well, then those resources and all that planning, they're not going to pan out the way that we initially imagined on a whiteboard or in a strategy meeting. And I love how you talked about how things in our personal lives can influence our professional lives. From my investigations career, one of the big lessons that thankfully I learned early on is that the overwhelming majority of people I interviewed were good people who made a regrettable decision based on changing circumstances in their life. Now, that doesn't mean they're not accountable. That doesn't mean there aren't consequences. I'm not taking any of that away. But I would argue that well over 85% of the people I interviewed, at least, if they were in different circumstances, they would have made a different decision. And as human beings, to not acknowledge that is a failure. And I'm so happy to hear you say it, of leadership. It's a failure of situational awareness, that these people aren't showing up trying to do a terrible job. Like, there's something else impacting that. And to your point, the airplane analogy I do think is great. And it's a little bit funny that a long time ago, somebody asked me, because I was traveling a whole lot more then than I do now, how I felt about getting on airplanes. And I kind of shrugged it off. I'm like, honestly, I just assume the pilot has a reason to land safe. So I got nothing to worry about. But if we don't take care of ourselves as leaders and we don't have a reason to fully function, then the people behind us are going to suffer, and we're not going to realize the impact we have or what's going on in their life. So right away, whatever it was, 5 minutes out of the gate, you just touched on a ton of super important considerations.
Yeah, I think there's something you said, and I'm taking notes because I'm learning from you, man. I told you I was so looking forward to this conversation just because of you and having you and hearing you. one of the things you mentioned was circumstances in their life, right? Making a regrettable decision. And I think, it's so important when we lead, and this is kind of compounding on the initial question, that we are exercising curiosity over judgment. It's such a big deal. It's very easy. It's very simple for us to come to work and go, you know what? Michael's not getting it done. Hey man, if you don't get it together, we're gonna have to get you out of here. And look, and that might be very direct, and it might be right. It might be actually factually correct, right? However, if there's another way to say that, I always say you have to pair candor with compassion. And so if I'm going to say this, here's the other way to say it. Hey, Michael, man, you're a rock star around here. Your work's been struggling the last couple weeks. Is everything okay, brother? Is everything going all right? Everything all right at home, man? And I'm saying the same thing. There are standards around here at this organization. You've got to perform or you're out of here, right? Or whatever it is. But man, we don't have to go with the hammer. We can exercise curiosity over judgment. It's such a big part of my life, and to the point where I'm almost thinking about getting a little tattoo. Like it's like curiosity with a line and judgment under it. Like I just think it's a freeing way to be. It creates trust, and honestly, I mean it gives room for the humanity in the people that we're leading, and as we move into this more technical world and this more connected world, right? I put connected, that's in quotes, connected, right? Connected world. I think we're losing that connection. And I think, it's getting real easy to be transactional with people. And we've got time constraints and everybody wants it yesterday. And so the people that are executing the work that are actually showing up are really not being afforded that space, that human space that I think we crave, man.
I don't think they are at all. I recently had a conversation with Brad Beeler, former Secret Service agent who just had a book come out. Great guy. And he said something that struck me. And we were talking more about interview and interrogation and that conversation, but he said we need to leave the space for people to come forward with the truth. Like if you go pushing for it, you're going to push them backwards. But if you give them the space to come forward, they will come forward with it. And that's the same thing that you're talking about here. If I attack somebody, Josh, you used to be great, now you suck. What's the problem? Like all you hear is I suck and you're super defensive. But if we come back with, hey man, looking at the history that we have here for the last 10 plus years, it's important for me to take a couple of minutes, just sit down, have a cup of coffee and say, yo, what's going on outside of these four walls that we don't see and how can we help? It lands different. And when it lands different, it produces different results. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm going to try to use that to segue back to the airplane analogy.
Yeah.
That you started with and kind of go back to the pilot before the cabin. And who knows how many times we'll jump around in between.
Yeah.
But one of the other things that I've seen you write about is how we can improve ourselves and how we show up for others, because I think that does set the standards and we lead by example. And there are I hate this word so much now, but like authentic ways to show vulnerability. How many times have those two words made me throw up in the back of my mouth? But there's real ways to do that we connect with people and it doesn't feel performative. So from your perspective, with your lived experience and with what you teach, how do you see how we can improve how we show up for others so as pilots we're doing a better job and can get more from the team?
I think number one is just being honest and honest in a way that, as a leader, being courageous enough to take off the mask and not status manage, as one of my mentors say. We're always trying to manage our status within the group. Like, we want the group to think we're the smartest, we're the most capable. We don't want the group to kick us out, right? If we're a leader, we want, and this is, I think a lot of insecurities that many of us carry, right? A lot of people rolling around with imposter syndrome, whatever it is. And so that forces them to get, like you said, performative or something. I had a line that I used to use when I was a commander, and I used to say, guys, I don't have to be right. We've got to get to right. And that brings everyone in. And I've always been very, very upfront. There's no chance there's no chance in the world that I'm smarter than this room. There's no chance in the world that we can't come up with a better answer than I can. And I've gotten to the point where I've gone in a room with a team, with other my directors or in the regular world or my subordinate commanders in the military. I'll come in and go, guys, I don't know what to do here. Like, we got to figure this out. We got to get this figured out. I'm responsible, right? It's on me if we don't. I got it. But like, we've got to figure this out together. And I think engaging people and the other piece, man, is and this might be a personal thing for me, Michael. I'm just a little more open with stuff. I got a wart, I got a scar. I'm gonna show it to you if you want to see it. I'm not ashamed of it. And I've done so much work on myself with forgiveness, dude. That's a big one, man. Like, forgiving others, I think, is a little bit easier than forgiving ourselves. And I've looked at all of my stuff and it is nasty. It's ugly, dude. I've done some terrible things, some regretful things. God, you were talking about regrettable decisions. I've made tons, man, and I've atoned for them. I've amended for them, but I've truly forgiven Josh, and I've accepted all of me, dude. Like, all of me. I mean, the warts, the scars, the idiotic things I say and still say and do. I'm really I've tell people this all the time. Be gentle with yourself, and through my gentleness with myself, and I've learned this through deep work, through teachers, through experiences, through therapy. You name it. I've tried it. Regarding mental health, regarding performance, I've tried so many things, man. And through that all, I'm okay with me, and I think in us being okay with ourselves and saying, yeah, I got this nasty part of me, or I got this thing, whatever that's unsavory. I think by me doing that and by us doing that with others, not only does it make me feel better, but I think it makes them feel better. Like, I think when we get more okay with ourselves, I think people become a little more okay with us. And I think the beautiful piece of that is they feel permission to be okay with themselves, and they feel permission to say what they're dealing with that they were worried about. And I'll just to foot stomp this. I don't want to talk too much on this answer, but I it's a weird thing. I imagine people. I talk a lot about this in workshops and retreats. I imagine people as like imagine like a half sun on top and a half moon on the bottom, right? So you have our sunny side with all the rays of our sun, right? And that's, hey, I'm good at golf, or I like basketball, or I'm into politics, or I like cars, or whatever it is, these things that we're into and we post on social media about, and we actually kind of cordon off our relationships with people that like those parts, those things. And that's how, and we try to connect that way. And sometimes on teams, you've got a disparate group of individuals, there are different interests, different things, and they have trouble connecting. But what I found, man, is the moon side, right? The shadow side, the stuff that we're hiding from others, the stuff we're hiding from ourselves, right? The fear, the guilt, the shame, the pain we've been through, the insecurity we have, all of that stuff, dude. I don't care what's happened in our lives, on the exterior. Internally, man, we process that stuff exactly the same. We feel the same. So the quicker, and this is me personally on my teams, the quicker we can get into an environment where we're sharing that shadow stuff and we're sharing the stuff that we're scared of, where we've been through, brother, we can connect so much faster and so much more deeply. And so that's been a big part of my leadership journey, my leadership philosophy as well.
That really hits home on a couple levels. I do think, not that anybody asked for my opinion, I think you're 100% right. It's way harder to forgive ourselves than it is to forgive other people. I don't even think that that's up for debate. Like, there's a huge difference between the two. And your approach of, I don't have to be right. We've got to get to right. Here's my bad idea. Who's got a better one? Like, putting yourself out there like that to put your team in control, let them feel like they have agency. This isn't top down, it's bottom up. It's showing that level of, and again, there are words that get used in ways that drive me nuts at this point, but just being vulnerable in front of the group and be like, yo, this is it. Yeah. Like, this isn't a trick. This isn't a technique. This is a strategy. This is where I'm at. This is where we need to go. Let's get there together, especially when they see that from a leader consistently. It just shifts the dynamics of the relationship and allows people that permission and freedom to problem solve and be themselves in a way they've never been before. How does that tie into your work around creating islands of progress?
Oh man. Um, wow, great question. And so Islands of Progress, that idea came from one of my teachers. And so how could I best explain this? So Islands of Progress to me are, you have these organizations, right? All these different whether it's corporate, defense, intelligence, whoever, right? These organizations that have a mission. And so often you get this guidance from the top, from the glass tower that comes down. Here's how we're going to do things, and here's how, we're going through a organizational change management, and this is how we're going to change. And you got the folks in the field or whoever's executing with the belly to belly with the customer, or with the enemy or whatever you're doing. You get all this guidance coming down to change the way you do things. We're going to do this for meetings. And so it feels very, kind of, you were saying it earlier, forced, like they're pushing it on you, which I understand that, but I understand it only when we don't have the time, right? When we don't have time, we got to move fast. You got to respect rank, got to follow orders, get it done. But if we just take a moment and we start to engage the people who are doing the work, who are out there, and allowing them to make changes, and allowing them to implement ideas, listening to them, letting them be heard, what we can do is create and foster an environment where we have problems identified by us, solutions identified and chosen and voted on by us. And then we start to we feel agency, and we start to feel ownership. One of the things that I've been doing a lot in the last 12 months, man, I've been getting a lot of phone calls from general contractors and data centers, right? So these data centers are going up all over the place. And you've got, your big data center players, right? The Googles, the Amazons, all this stuff. And they don't care about anything else but getting that project done on target, on time, opened up, and, facilitating growth, right? That's what they want done. So I've had a number of these projects, the general contractors, the project executives, directors call me and be like, Riz, man, we don't know what the heck's going on. We've got a job site with 500 people on it. There are 11 subcontractors, 9 different trades, right? From carpentry to iron workers to electricals, whatever. No one's getting along. There's been safety issues. And oh, by the way, we're a month or two behind schedule. So, like, we don't know what to do. So, like, you're the weird guy we're calling because we tried everything else. Seriously, dude, like that's the kind of phone calls I get. So the first time I did this, I was like, all right, cool. I'm like, here's what I want to do. I'm like, give me four of your most influential foremen from each unit, each sub, each all the trades, and I want you to bring them into a clamshell tent, air conditioning, something where they can listen and relax on the job site, because you can't get them off the job site. They're already burning a ton of money with getting these 50 people, 60 people into a clamshell for me. So I go bring them all in, and I want them in groups of 4 and tables of 4, and I need a screen, and I need 3 hours. And they're like, oh man, I'm like, hey, this is how it's got to be done. Okay, so they let me come do the first one. And the guys all pouring, mostly guys, right? Couple gals, but they come pouring in, and they all sit down, and I stand up and I go, okay. I'm like, everybody sitting at your tables with your homies, and everyone's like, yep. I'm like, get up. Like, what? I'm like, get up, sit with some people you don't know, right? So you have all these, this kind of standing there with their arms crossed. So I bring them in. I'm like, all right, guys, and we spend the first module. It's called Who Are We? And so I tell some vulnerable stories about my past and, some of the stuff I've been through and how I got into speaking or whatever it is that I do, facilitating, consulting. And I tell some stories that are hard to tell about me. And then I have them, I have a list on the board with, 6 questions. 2 of them are pretty simple softballs, like, talk about something you're grateful for, or something that, a funky fact about yourself. If you're having a rough day, answer one of those. You get 5 minutes each in your group of 4 to talk about it. The other 4 questions, though, if one of those makes your lip quiver and you're a little scared to answer, that's the one I'm begging you to answer. And those questions are more like, talk about a time in your life when someone carried you. Talk about something rough that's going on right now. Talk about a time the train got thrown off the tracks, right? Real personal, interpersonal, human stuff, Michael. So they share, we got people crying, people, and they start to realize, man, these are other humans. This iron worker is not the worst person in the world. Hey, this electrician's sister is autistic just like mine. Like all these different things, right? So we get through that like 30 or 40 or 50 minutes, whatever it is. And then we move into this next section, which says, what are we seeing? And you get all these. Oh, by the way, I kick all the owners out. The owners, the directors, they're gone. This is a players only meeting, right? So the next one is hey, what are we seeing? What are the worst problems on this job site? Like why are we having safety issues? Why are we behind schedule? What the heck is the problem? So boom, they sit, and they talk in their groups for another, 15 minutes. And then I have them with this, data program. They kind of input them from their phone. They shoot a QR code on the screen. And I ask them, hey, what are the three biggest problems? So everybody puts them in, and then boom, they shoot up on the screen and they shoot right back into the phones. So the phones get the list of 50 different issues, and usually they're pretty similar. So there's probably like 20 issues, and they have a chance to vote. So they vote on these things, right? And then we come up with the 5 biggest issues on the job site right there. And it's from the people. It's not from up top, it's from us, right? And they go, all right, these 5 problems. So this first one, I looked at and I was like, oh, we need more porta potties. I'm like, done. I got it. I got that one. Number 2, there's a section on site where the guys are having a hard time getting in the northeast corner. It's slowing down work. All right, I'll take care of that too. We're going to talk to the owner about that. But these 3 issues, aren't these ours? And everyone's like, heck yeah, they are. I'm like, can't we fix these without asking darn management to help us? Like, can't we take a little ownership? Heck yeah, we can. Okay. Module number 3, here we go. How can what's the solution? How can we fix it? So they go back into their groups, for 30 minutes, talk, and we get the solutions for each of those 3 big problems that are ours. And then they own them. They vote on them, they take them back. And then the last one, I have everybody make commitments. What am I going to do from my place every day on these solutions? And dude, like, it is the coolest thing in the world to see these people. They create their own meetings, right? So now they have a standing meeting every day that they never had between foreman reps, right? A foreman rep, right? Like these, they just need a little love. Like these problems we think we have in organizations, we think they're sophisticated, we think they're logistical. They're not. Most of them, I'd say 90% of them, man, are interpersonal. And if we give people a chance to identify what the issues are and then a chance to come up with their own solutions, with us there, obviously, we can truly create these islands of progress, and they don't feel forced. They don't feel pushed down. And we have people, influential people in the ranks creating change, man. And it's just so revolutionary. It's a different way to do things. And I've seen so much success, both personally in my own journey and professionally with the work I'm getting to do now. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but that's I would say that's probably the biggest islands of progress piece that I've been able to kind of and get going.
No, I think that was a great answer. I think that was a great example. I have a fraction of the experience in the construction industry that you do, but even looking through the limited lens that I have with some of the groups that I've worked with, like just because you can doesn't mean you should. We don't have license just to be aggressive all the time and be confrontational all the time. And it's not always adversarial. Like it's not that sub's fault. It's not the GC's responsibility in breaking down those walls. So that was a great example. And that type of like field level bottom up change is so impactful because even from a leadership standpoint, far more often than not, the people on the ground have a way better idea what's actually going on than the people looking in from the outside. Let's just accept that fact 9/10 of the time, if not 10/10 of the time. So let's go right to the source anyway, and then let's get that input. Let's get it rolling. Now they own it. Now they have power, and the more power they feel like they have, the more control they feel like they have, the more ownership. So no, I think it was a great example. I'm going to tie that into a quote that I saw on your website. I'm going to see if I can remember the person who said it. Was it a Clement Stone quote?
I don't know.
Big doors swing on little hinges.
Oh yeah. I love that. I think it was Clement Stone. I can't remember offhand, but yes, that quote stays with me, man. I just mentioned that. I just mentioned that last week, keynote in a conference. It's such a it's such a big deal in my life, and it's really it's got a good visual for me. I'm a visual guy, so seeing a big door swing on a little hinge, yeah, that means the world to me.
I think I get it right out of the way because the quote just grabbed me. But can you explain to people what that means? Because I feel like that ties in super well to these islands of progress ideas.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And just to wrap the last thing on the Islands of Progress thing, you said something that really piqued me. Um, and I don't know where I heard this, but solutions typically come from within 10 feet of the problem. They don't come from the glass tower. So we got to get down there where it is, but getting back to the big doors swinging on little hinges, man. This is something that really, really moved me when I first read it several years back. And it helps a lot for people that want to change their lives. They want to be more peaceful. They want to perform better at work. They want to whatever it is they want to develop in some aspect of their life. And sometimes, man, it's overwhelming. You're just looking at it, I want all these things, I want to make all these big heroic changes, and that's how we are as humans. Like, but the reality is there are tiny little hinges in our life that we can pay attention to, that we can make changes with, that we can, influence, that swing big doors. And one great example of this, and I talk about this a lot with construction folks, right? There's a huge, huge problem in mental health in construction. I mean, it's brutal, dude. And we could talk about the numbers all day. Maybe hit on them later, but actually, let me hit them right now.
Please.
There's three at work deaths, just about three at work deaths every day in construction in America. That's about 1,000 a year. It's been like that for about 20 years, right? And those deaths come from pinch points, falls, holes, all these different things that, and it's terrible. It's unfortunate. Three per day. Now in 2024, during those three deaths per day that we spend all the money on safety equipment, safety training, everything to prevent those three deaths, there are 14 suicides every day. And there were 31 fatal overdoses every day, right? So you're looking at 45 deaths per day from mental health, right? From how we're showing up, for how our mind and heart are, compared to three. I mean, dude, it's an order of magnitude bigger, right? Like it's crazy to think about, but we're not putting time into how people are showing up. And we're not investing, as owners, as guardians of this industry of building in America, we're not investing in these people. So a lot of the talks and the stuff that I do, the work that I do with folks around mental health and construction, with the small hinges, the big doors swinging, something I bring up all the time. I'm like, guys, think about making your lunches on a Sunday. You take 40 minutes out of your life, 30 to 45 minutes. You make 5 lunches for the week on Sunday, right? That's a tiny hinge. And what does it affect? Number one, your finances. You're going to have more money. You're not spending 15, 20 bucks on lunch every day. It's almost $100 a week. That's 400 bucks a month, right? Like, that's crazy. Number two, your health. It's probably going to be a little bit healthier than that Arby's cheeseburger and fries that you're slamming with, with all those seasonings, or the sugary coffees that you're drinking, right? Like, and then finally, like, your time. It's going to open up time. Maybe you can get a meditation in at lunch. Maybe you can get a lift in. Maybe you can go check on your people. There's so many other things that this affects in your life. And so there's a ton of those little hinges in my life, that big doors swing on. But I encourage people to look at those, and sometimes if you want to look at it organizationally, Michael, sometimes it's certain people that are influencers within, I hate that word too.
Yeah.
But no, it's people that have heavy influence in your organization. I was working with a CEO 3 years ago. He asked me to fly out to Ohio. He tells me, he brings me out there and he says, hey, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. And I told him, hey, we're going to do this workshop for your people. 150 of his biggest leaders from across the country came in. So I said, the day before the workshop, I'd like to sit down with the 10 people that run your company. He goes, oh, great. I'll get my staff. I'll let them know. I said, I don't want to talk to your staff, bro. He said, what do you mean? I said, I want you to go out to the job site. The 10 people that run your company. They might not have titles. They're the guy that everyone listens to, and he says he likes this new tool, and that's how they're going to do it, right? It's the gal that has the loud voice that people look to her for advice when things get fast because she knows how to get things done. I need those 10 people because those 10 people, when I speak to them and spend the hour with them the day before we go do this heartfelt work with the rest of the organization, if those 10 people are bought in, and I have them sitting and throughout the organization as we're doing this deep, kind of dive on interpersonal, heart-centered leadership, whatever you want to call it, that's really going to move the needle. And those 10, those are the little hinges that swing this big door. And we don't take a look at that within organizations. Oh, it's the directors, the VPs. Yeah, not really. It's actually not, especially in an organization where you're doing hard work on the ground every day. So I think you can look at it that way too. There are tiny little pieces within systems that really make things move.
That's a great example and a great way to wrap it up at the end. Tiny little pieces within systems that make the bigger things move. Sometimes it's machinery, but a lot of times it's people. And I agree with you. The word influencer is one of the top 10 worst words in the world at this point. But there are people within organizations that don't have the title, that don't sit in the office, but they're the ones that this whole thing swings around. And in order to really identify who those people are and learn from them and maximize their participation, a lot of listening is involved.
Yes.
And I'm going to be a little bit selfish with this one, but when I was getting prepped for this, I may or may not have seen you right that the most beautiful thing we can do is listen. And I think that's worth calling out.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, that is a piece I wrote. The most beautiful thing we can do is listen. Oh man, I think it's number one, it's great currency in whatever situation you're in. I've heard people say things like, I've never listened my way out of a deal. Like listening is great. We learn so much and it also makes people feel heard, feel accepted. It kind of lands on those personal needs we talked about, right? Feeling cared for. I have something I say a lot to people. I try to boil things down because it's just easier and have little sayings. And in this one, I don't know where I picked it up. But be interested, not interesting. When we're interested in what's going on, and we're listening to understand, right? To understand, not to respond. It's a total different energy. It's an open energy, and it's something where we can learn a ton, man. And I saw this working, in corporate America with sales teams. You get this new salesperson and say they're selling you this widget, right? And they're so motivated, they're so excited. They learn all the value proposition behind the widget. They learn what it can do for the customer, and they run into a potential customer and they say, "Look at this widget. Here's what it does. Here's blah blah. Here's why it's so much better." Blah blah blah. And the customer doesn't need that. It's not their problem. It has nothing to do with them, and they just wasted their time, their customers' time, potential customers' time, when all they needed to do was go in there. And first, what we had in our sales process was identifying priorities. Have a conversation. Hey, what's going on? How are things going at work? Where do you guys need help? Where are you guys struggling? Where are your pain points? Whatever. Then you start to learn and you start to be able to tailor a solution for them. Instead of trying to jam a square peg in a round hole. And so many of us are doing that, I think, because we don't feel heard. Because we're not having people who are sitting in presence, people that are prioritizing direction over speed, right? Most of us are prioritizing speed over direction, and we're firing from one thing to the next, and we're so overworked and overwhelmed that we don't even give space to ourselves, let alone think about giving it to someone else. And I think, listening, not only do we learn a ton, another thing about the listening, we might learn what they say, but I really try to listen energetically. You can listen with your ears. You can listen with your ears and your eyes. You can listen with your ears, your eyes, and your heart. And man, if you can really get into a rhythm of being that way, of being open, of opening your heart and trying to really feel what this person is going through, this empathy, empathy is huge. It's everything. I mean, it's truly putting yourself in their shoes. And I think when you do that for someone, and you show up that way, it's palpable, man. They can feel it. They can feel it. And man, this person actually cares. They're actually listening. And I think it's so sparse these days, man.
It's very sparse. And I think often is disincentivized a word? It is now, but it's people aren't incentivized to listen. You're incentivized with results. You're incentivized with tasks. You're incentivized with speed. But you're not incentivized with making the connection. Are you listening for information? Or are you listening for intelligence? Are you just picking up on keywords so you can deliver what you wanted to before you ever even walked into this room? Or you, like you said, are you listening with your whole heart and really picking up on what somebody's experiencing, where they at, and then trying to identify new roads to get from where they currently are to where either they need to be or you want them to be, ethically, of course, depending on the situation. But I really like what you said there, and I feel like I had another point that I was going to throw in, and now I've completely spaced it because I liked what you said so much. But really understanding where they're coming from and having that empathy is so very important. And when you think about empathy, I think this was the point I was going to make. Acceptance and agreeing are two different things.
Right.
So having empathy for somebody, what they're saying, how they're feeling, doesn't mean you agree with it. Doesn't even necessarily mean that you like it. You can just accept the fact that for them right now, this is a valid emotion. It's a valid perspective. It's a valid point. It's a valid feeling. I can accept that. And then we can find a way to work through it or get beyond it together.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. We don't. The other piece about it is it honors them. It honors where they're coming from, man. There's a really cool um thing. I learned a couple of words last year, and I wrote this thing about them. It was two German words, and I'm probably gonna butcher these. I hope I don't. But the first one is Umwelt, Umwelt, and the second one is Umgebung. Okay. So these two words kind of refer to exactly what we're talking about. And say me and you go to a baseball game, right? A Major League Baseball game. The Umgebung is the environment, the objective shared environment. There's 35,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs, rooting for their teams with red hats on or blue hats on or green hats or whatever. And there's hot dogs and there's all this stuff is it's the environment. Now, you and I can go to that same Umgebung and have two completely different experiences. You're there rooting for your team. You're so excited. You haven't been to a ball game in 7 years. Maybe I have social anxiety or some past trauma, and I have a problem being in crowds like that. So my Umwelt and your Umwelt are two completely different things in the same Umgebung. And if we can remember and keep that in kind of in focus, man, I think it helps with everything we do, from relationships, which leadership is a relationship. Let's get that straight first. But relationships with friends, with family, with anything, with organizations, with the way we lead, just honoring the umwelt of another. It's such a big deal to me, and it really kind of those two words just stuck with me, man. And then really they stay with me, and it really it helps me in the way I receive people, man.
That's a great point. I expected you to teach me a lot of things today. I did not expect you to teach me German. So I got nowhere on my bingo card for that one. That was a nice surprise. But you're 100% right. And both experiences can be different, both experiences can be valid, and both experiences can be correct. And if we can appreciate that as curiosity over judgment, if I can either appreciate, honor, or potentially, depending on our relationship, be curious about it. Is there something I can do to improve it? Is there something I can do to reduce the anxiety? Is there,
Exactly.
depending on the relationship, is it worth compromising? I do love going to baseball games, by the way. So I'm here. I want to be here. This is one of my favorite environments, but it's not for you. So you've already made it through 4 innings. I got to watch Pedro Martinez pitch live, so I'm happy. Maybe we go sit somewhere else and we catch the end of the game at a bar, at a restaurant, whatever. And then, so it gives us that opportunity to move relationships forward when you're attentive to these types of things.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think it takes time. I think that's why many of us don't don't do it. I had a teacher who says that the way you spell love, trust, and leadership is the same. Time. And if we can give people that time, that little bit of time, a little bit of extra consideration, we can open a whole new world, not just for us, but for them, for organizations, for anyone we touch. And again, kind of going back right back to the top of the conversation, if we're not taking care of us, it's going to be very hard for us to give something to someone we're not giving to ourselves, right? And it takes time. It takes giving ourselves time, right? Taking time for formal reflection, taking time for, examining our perspective and how we're showing up and how we're seeing things. I just think so many of us again are just we get into this place of prioritizing speed over direction. And you mentioned something earlier, yeah, we're all results oriented. I couldn't agree with you more. But the results sometimes they're coming out haphazard for most of us because we're so just obsessed with the speed of things. And I mean, it's not even I don't even want to put it on an outward blame of society, which is easy, right? Like, society's moving fast and it's blah, 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 and our bosses want this and blah. Still, we still find ourselves, I talk about this a lot on calls with leaders. We still find ourselves, we got a 3 hour layover at an airport, and we're walking 120 paces a minute to try and get to that gate and sit down, and we're moving, knocking people out of our way. And it's like, yo, what are you doing? Why are you moving so fast and frantically and like energetically? Like, how about taking a breath, enjoying the art in this beautiful airport, right? People watching, whatever you want to do, man. But the running and the leaning forward to the next step, we're all leaning to this next step. Why is that step better than this step? And what are we missing on this step by hustling to that next step? It's just it's wild, and it's endemic. It's across everybody that I see that I work with.
I agree completely. But for the record, if the people in the airport had spatial awareness and knew how to walk in public places, I wouldn't need to run them over.
That's true. You almost sound like a New Yorker.
I wanna get that. The next time I'm walking through an airport and someone just stops and turns around, I should be able to drill them. Just saying. You should get one per trip where that's legal. But to take it back to what we are talking about, I couldn't agree with you more. And time is the enemy of empathy. Anytime we're focused on time or speed, we can't possibly be empathizing, learning, connecting with other people.
I
So
love that.
I agree with you 1000%. Slow down to go fast, all of those things that have been said so many times before. But anytime we're prioritizing speed, we're de-incentivizing, disincentivizing. Didn't I make that word up earlier?
Yeah, I
Everything
like it.
else, the more important things. We can't be learning, we can't be connecting. So I couldn't agree more. Dude, I would love to keep this conversation going. I'm watching the clock. I know you got another meeting that you got to run to. So I'm going to try to put a cork in it here. Maybe we can do this again sometime soon.
Love to.
But before we go, we got a couple of minutes left. You were involved in a lot of different projects on the, for lack of a better word, the civilian or the private sector side, on the military and veteran side. So please take as much time as you need and let us know, where can we follow you? Where can we learn from you? How can we engage with you? What are these programs that you're running? How do you support people?
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I am. So the first thing I'd probably direct people to is my website, joshrizzohuman.com. That's pretty simple, just my name and human, all one word. Most of the work that I've been doing, I don't do a great job on social media. I just don't, not at this point. I've been pushed by a lot of people to kind of do more there, and I think that'll be coming soon. It's at some point in the next year, but I write a ton on LinkedIn. There's a lot. I'm working on a book, a couple of books, but I'm working on a lessons project, just things that and there's stuff I'm still working on, man. And so I'm kind of sharing those with the world as I'm editing them and working through these thoughts and just things that I'm learning. But really, most of my work is focused on growth, and that's personal growth, it's organizational growth. It's mental health, it's taking a look inward, it's working with people doing coaching, it's half day workshops, 2, 3, 4 day retreats, some up to 7 or 8 days. Some of these retreats I'm taking groups on, but really everything is focused on how can we take better care, deeper care of ourselves, our families, our loved ones, and those we serve, the communities we serve, those we lead. So really, it's been an incredible ride. And like you said, most of my work is, I'd say probably 60% of my work is in construction, and then another, 20-30% in defense and intelligence. And then, there's another sporadic, I do some tech stuff, some corporate stuff, some whatever, some nonprofit stuff, but it's really about humans, man. And it's something that I think is applicable to everyone. Like you said, Michael, I've got people on this side of the spectrum that I work with literally double digit suicide attempts, man. And on the other side, people that are CEOs, big executives, politicians that I work with, that are trying to level up or get to their next level or unlock or whatever they're trying to do, that their lives are good. They're just trying to make them better. And what I found is that the medicine's the same. It's looking inside. It's getting okay with this, man. Getting okay with what's going on and tending to this, giving it time, right? Time. And it's the journey is outward from there. So everything starts with the heart, man. It starts with looking within, and it reverberates out into our families and our organizations. And I've seen just some incredible results over the last 4 years, and I feel like the luckiest guy in the world, dude. Like I really do. I love what I do. I love getting the chance to do it.
Oh, that is obvious. So thank you very much for the work that you do. It's important work. It's literally impacting lives, changing organizations. We didn't get into your personal story. This really isn't the place for that. But what you've worked through and what you've overcome to realize, and then being able to turn around and share that with so many others, is a really special gift. So thank you for sharing all of that. This conversation has entirely been my privilege. So thank you very much. I look forward to staying in touch, man. Stay safe. Let's do this again soon.
All right. Thanks, brother. You take care.
Take care.
All right.
Josh, thank you for a great conversation. Appreciate the couple shots you took at me along the way. I really enjoyed that whole conversation. Thank you so much for all that you shared. I could go back and really highlight 2/3 of the conversation at least and make everyone listen to it again. But a couple of ideas just to touch on before we head out today. The importance of stop status signaling. So very important for all of us to consider the downside of that behavior. Also, the danger of getting it right. That was another great point. And I love how you talked about how big doors swing on little hinges. And often it's the little things we do that create the biggest opportunities. Thank you for sharing all of your experience. Thank you for all the tremendous work that you're doing out there. I look forward to talking to you again soon. And of course, thank you to everybody that took the time to listen to another episode. We really do appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you so very much. Hopefully you got just as much out of that conversation as I did. While you're here, please just take a quick moment to subscribe to the show, like the show, leave us your feedback, share it with your network, leave a review. We really appreciate all the support. Thank you so very much. And before you log off the internet for the final time today, please check out our sponsors. Again, humantel.com, best in class online training to recognize when people's emotions are shifting based on accurately interpreting their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. You can enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off the training of your choice. For the professional interviewers, certifiedyinterviewer.com is the place to go. That's where you can get all your questions answered on the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation, as well as the International Association of Interviewers, both at the national level and at the local chapters. And of course, please check out inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, negotiation teams, HR teams, and more to teach them how to unlock hidden value in all of their high impact conversations. We appreciate you being here for another week. Thank you so very much. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.